Hello everyone. This talk is about practical questions and I hope you find it helpful. Let us start by considering 5 clear and definite ideas that will help us in our quest for a deeper and illumined understanding. A way to inner peace and freedom does exist. And once gained, it can never be lost. It is both a way out and a way in. A way out of what? A way out of restrictions of our personality. It shows us how to rise above the stress and frustration caused by these restrictions. It is also a way in. The way of the yoga of self-knowledge leads us into ourselves in order to discover something deeper, stronger, quite wonderful and totally free. We carry this freedom with us all the time, but it is as if we had lost touch with it. This is partly because of the powerful force of outer attractions, which keeps our gaze fixed on outer things most of the time. We easily become victims of superficial and conventional ways of thinking. But new openings are always possible. Our own being has its root in the realm of peace and light. This is the real basis of our experience, even now. We can reconnect with it at any time, if we're alert and responsive, and make our own experiments with the practices. This will make it possible for us to grasp the significance of a few basic ideas that are the foundation of the inner transformation. The first idea that opens a way is this: I can transform my mind into an instrument of peace, freedom, and power to help. As self-conscious human beings, there is no reason why we should be slaves to the moods and tendencies that arise in our own mind. These inner forces are not like the wind or the waves beyond our control. We have already learned to shape our mind through education and training. There is also a higher development which anyone can pursue. This development leads us to inner peace, freedom, and conscious immortality. The idea is, I can intervene in my inner world to give a new direction to my thoughts and feelings. I can intervene at any time, at any moment. I do not have to wait for things to calm down in order to help myself. Things may never calm down, but there is a way of influencing my mind wisely and benevolently right now. Meditation includes this kind of internal self-management. Quite apart from the deeper dimension of meditation, the practice gives us insight into the real life workings of the mind. It also strengthens our ability to supervise and direct the inner life. One further reflection. We've used the word instrument in relation to the mind. An instrument is something that we can take up and put down as and when we need it. An instrument has different parts, which we learn how to control and to adjust. It's not pleasant, for example, having a radio without volume control, or a shower that is either too hot or too cold. Such instruments can be more of a nuisance than a delight to their owner. The mind itself is a kind of instrument of our higher self. As such, the mind was never meant to be a source of bondage and frustration. At times, the mind may be subject to moods, but such moods do not touch the deeper self. The mind may be momentarily embarrassed, and the body may react accordingly. These disturbances in no way influence our true being, any more than the apparent play of changing colors on the sea's surface influences the fundamental transparency of the water. If we study the philosophy of yoga, non-dual teachings, we will discover that such statements as "I am sad," "I was sad," "I'm embarrassed," and the feeling that our whole being is involved in these emotions are based on an incomplete understanding of our experience. We are confusing the nature of the instrument, the mind, with its owner, the true I or self. Each and every one of us has a deeper center, which transcends and is unaffected by whatever happens on the mental level. The essence of wisdom is to learn to withdraw our sense of identity, our feeling of "I am this," from all that is limited, including the mind and its moods, into this deeper center of undisturbed peace, the pure I. It is this crucial fact that allows us to stand back from the mental stage and view the drama as an onlooker, not as one who is personally implicated. More than this, as our key idea suggests, we are actually in a position to change the plot. We can learn to take our stand on our higher nature, and from that position of inner certainty and power, view any mental scene, however absorbing or intimidating, from a higher perspective. Not least, we can invoke a new and more worthwhile scenario, or simply create an interval of peace and quiet. Therefore, this key idea, I can transform my mind into an instrument of peace, freedom, and power to help, reminds us of our fundamental authority, an authority we may have forgotten for the time being, but which is ever established in our deeper consciousness and can be revived through practice. Our second idea that opens a way is the underlying unity of all life. If matured, the idea of the underlying unity of all life prepares us for realizing the infinitude and freedom of our being. It liberates us from many of the limiting ways of thought that cause disturbance in our mind. It's only natural that as we enter the arena of life, we find ourselves in situations where we are pitted against others. Nowadays, we may be spared the clash of empires, but life is full of the clashes of egos, of individuals with conflicting interests and ambitions. These tensions and conflicts can happen anywhere, at work, in the home, on the road. Most of our fears and anxieties are due to the real or imagined threats of other people, or on a more tragic level, other races, other nations, other creeds. Some competition may be good and necessary in order to rouse us to action and inspire a spirit of industry and innovation. There is nothing like a challenge to bring out our hidden potentialities. But we lose perspective and risk delusion if we forget the underlying unity which subsists at the deepest level. Our appreciation of the fundamental unity of all life is a key to the higher wisdom. In the Bhagavad Gita, the idea is illustrated where it is said, "All beings are supported by me, as beads threaded together on one string." And again, "I am the Self seated in the heart of all beings." The vision is universal and all-embracing. The same insight is transmitted in the first verse of another ancient text, the Isha Upanishad. All this, whatever moves on the earth or does not move, should be covered with God. That is, covered with the feeling that the divine is the true essence of everything. Meditation on this verse helps us to apprehend the underlying unity and to transcend the negative feeling of envy. As the verse continues, "Do not envy anyone's wealth," or literally, "Do not envy, for whose is wealth?" This vision of universality is fundamental to our inner progress. But how is it put into practice? The yogic approach is to work from the inside out. First, plant the idea of unity in one's own heart. Silence the thoughts of antagonism, whether to individuals or peoples. Stop classifying people according to appearances or superficial facts we know about them. Do not encourage these ideas at all. Instead, reflect on the deeper source of all life, the golden thread of unity running through the apparent diversity. When our thoughts and feelings are steeped in this idea, the spirit of unity will naturally find expression through us on the outer plane. This is not a case of seeking uniformity, of wanting everyone to follow the same path, to wear the same colors. It's a case of looking beyond the surface, of appreciating our essential oneness with all, and of enjoying the rich diversity of beings, of religions, of cultural expressions from that level of deeper insight. What can we do to foster this vision of oneness? Let us first tutor our own heart in this unity outlook, and then we'll find that our response to others is based on our growing understanding of the deeper reality underlying all. In our conversation particularly, we are advised not to run down individuals, nations or races, or support any conversation that does so. A wise silence can prompt people to think again and helps more than we know. We may also decide to withdraw our presence if necessary. There is a saying, "Put the brute to sleep in those you meet." It may be difficult to know how to bring out the best in people, but anyone can learn how to damp down the complaining and critical spirit. This negativity in conversation often grows large through our interest and subtle encouragement. Putting the brute to sleep means quietly withdrawing our active support for these negative tendencies in ourselves or in others. If we are meditating on the underlying unity, there will be a force running through us which will serve as an influence for good wherever we are. In this way, the mind becomes an instrument of peace, freedom, and power to help, whether we know it or not. All these ideas may be well and good, but life does confront us with continual difficulties. Sometimes these challenges stimulate a reaction which goes against what we know to be the right response. So at this stage, let us offer not so much a principle or an idea, but a practice. And this is the practice of tranquil endurance, our third suggestion. The practice is to visualize the two words, tranquil endurance, in letters of light before us. To focus our attention on these words and to sustain this attention as far as possible for a few minutes. The principle behind this practice applies to the whole of life, for it is in the outer life that we often meet things that we have to endure rather than enjoy. We may be remarkably good at enduring the inconvenience of long queues, transport delays, and so on. But often our outer endurance may be just a matter of restraint. Inwardly, we may be fuming and in a very unpeaceful state. If our endurance can be sustained in tranquility, then it has a deep, inwardly transformative value. And this can be achieved by consciously adopting this practice of tranquil endurance. How and when should we apply it? There is a saying, "What we cannot cure, we must endure." The occasions are surely countless when we find ourselves in slightly uncomfortable situations that we simply cannot change. All these are opportunities to invoke the practice of tranquil endurance. The practice will not only help us through the situation, it will also bring many deeper benefits. Firstly, we are deliberately suppressing the complaining spirit within us, which does not help at all, and often makes a small problem big. Secondly, we are affirming our mastery over circumstances through applying our will in a special way. Thirdly, such a practice is an indirect reminder that our innermost self is always tranquil, always above the flux of circumstances. In recalling this truth, we are taking our stand on our real nature. The practice of tranquil endurance is linked to the idea that there is something in us which is really unaffected by the trials and irritations of life. And this leads us to our fourth idea. My real nature is unaffected by any change. This can be briefly expressed as, I am unaffected. The sentence refers to our identity as the transcendental, our true self. We've heard that our familiar sense of being just the body and mind is not based on the most penetrating analysis of our experience. There is something in us which is deeper. This is our innermost consciousness. It is that which is aware of the changing thoughts and feelings, their rise, transformation, and disappearance, but is never itself caught up in these psychological changes or movements. This innermost principle, indicated by the word I, is the main subject of the classics of non-duality. It is above time, unborn, eternal. It is the hidden support that enables the body and mind to function. But it is not localized within the body. It is universal and all-pervasive. Therefore, when we have some appreciation of this teaching, we find that we can affirm with intelligence and authority, come what may, I am unaffected. At this point, we may argue, but I am affected. I'm always affected. Disappointments hurt me. Insults do sting. And when I'm congratulated, I'm naturally pleased. What is affected in all these cases is not the true self, but the ego, the sense of I, when it is identified with our body and mind. The true self is the innermost awareness that knows from within the changes of the mind and the smiles and tears of the ego, and yet is not affected in any way. It is invulnerable, established in eternal freedom. The ego may be affected, but I am unaffected, and I am not the ego. The ego is an aspect of the mind. The mind is always changing, but that which is aware of the mind, the ultimate I, does not change. In this sense, I am unaffected. I am unaffected by any change. This principle will help us deal with many painful feelings connected with what is called taking it personally. In its maturity, it will teach us to view our personality as a detached observer and to identify with our universal self. And so this conviction, I am unaffected, has the potentiality to confer a high degree of freedom on our inner life. The last idea, which opens a way, though familiar as a popular maxim, has a real application to those following the path of self-realization. And is this: God helps those who help themselves. If we accept that the true essence of everything is the divine, it follows that help can come from a grace emanating from the depths of our own being. This teaching is a theme of the Bhagavad Gita, which declares that the inner darkness is dispelled by the Lord dwelling in our heart. But in whatever way we think of the Supreme Being, most seekers appreciate the need for higher guidance and accept that individual efforts, alone and unaided, will not secure the final release. Help and guidance are needed from a qualified teacher, from the classical texts, and not least from the supreme reality within our own being, that is our true self. This help or grace will not just come by itself. We have to take the necessary steps, making a place in our life for meditation, and also adjusting our lifestyle if necessary. We do want an overall solution to our problems. Everyone has a thirst for complete fulfillment, lasting achievement, the end of all fretful efforts, and final peace. No doubt many naively think that wealth, power or fame will cure the hunger of the soul. But the only cure is inner light and peace, leading to liberation. These blessings will not simply manifest in us due to some divine favoritism. We have to take the first step and go on making our sincere contribution to the inner transformation. Help and light will inevitably follow in harmony with the higher law of our being. To explore any one of these ideas will lead to new openings and possibilities in our inner life. We'll be on a path of inner progress leading to self-realization. The goal is not distant, for it is the awakening to the true nature of the self. We can't literally walk towards it, because it's our own immediate consciousness and being. But we need to prepare our mind for this breakthrough in understanding. We need to foster the aspiration that feels the limitations of empirical experience and longs to transcend them. And it's through the mind that has been transformed by soaking itself in the ideas that open a way, that the nature of the self is realized, and one knows oneself to be totally free, blissful, immortal and infinite, one with the supreme reality and source of all. Thank you for your attention.